At dawn, the Great Pyramid rose like a mountain carved by human hands. Its 114 steps climbed toward a sky still bruised with night, each stone slick from yesterday's rain, and something darker. Below, in the plaza of Tenochtitlan, the city stirred. Merchants arranged obsidian blades and jade figurines. Priests burned copal incense until smoke wrapped the temple like a shroud. And from the holding pens came a sound that never quite stopped, the low murmur of the chosen, those marked to meet the gods before sunset. This wasn't murder. It was duty. The Aztecs believed the sun itself would fail without human blood, that crops would wither, that the universe would collapse into chaos. Every beating heart torn from a chest was a down payment on tomorrow. And the priests, faces painted black, hands stained permanent red, they weren't killers. They were saviors, keeping the cosmic machine grinding forward, one sacrifice at a time. Today we're climbing those blood-soaked steps. We're entering the world of the Aztec Empire, where devotion and horror became impossible to separate, where children were left to die in caves to please rain gods, where warriors competed for the honor of being sacrificed, where an entire civilization built its identity on the edge of an obsidian knife. Before we begin, subscribe so you don't miss our next descent into history's most disturbing chapters. Now take a breath. The drums are starting. The priests are ready, and the gods are waiting. The debt that could never be repaid. The Aztecs didn't invent human sacrifice. They perfected it. Their mythology was built on cosmic debt. According to legend, the gods gathered at Teotihuacan in darkness, arguing over who would become the sun. Two gods volunteered, the wealthy Tezcatl and the humble Nanahuatzin. When the moment came, Tezcatl hesitated at the sacred fire. But Nanahuatzin, covered in sores and poverty, threw himself into the flames without flinching. He became the fifth sun, the current age. But this sun was motionless, frozen in the sky. The other gods realized what had to be done. One by one, they sacrificed themselves, giving their blood to set the sun in motion. The message was carved into Aztec consciousness from that moment forward. The gods died so humans could live. Now humans must die so the gods and the sun could continue. This wasn't cruelty. It was cosmology. Blood was Chalchuhatl, precious water. The heart was the most valuable offering imaginable. To withhold it would be selfish, apocalyptic even. The Aztecs saw themselves as participants in an eternal exchange, feeding the universe with the only currency the gods would accept. Spanish conquistador Bernal Diaz del Castillo would later describe the temples with horror. But for the Aztecs, the scent of blood was incense, the odor of piety. The flower wars, harvesting souls. The Aztecs needed a steady supply of victims, so they engineered conflicts specifically to gather them. These were the Xochiaoyotl, the flower wars, ritualized battles fought not for land or treasure, but for captives. Starting in the mid-1400s, the Aztec Empire and neighboring city-states like Tlaxcala and Huexotzingo agreed to periodic combat. Warriors faced each other with wooden clubs embedded with obsidian, trying not to kill, but to capture. A dead enemy was useless. A living captive was a gift to the gods. Capturing someone in battle was the ultimate honor. Warriors who took multiple prisoners gained status, better clothing, and respect. Those who failed were shamed. Young men grew up dreaming not of killing enemies, but of dragging them back alive, bound and ready for the temple. These weren't small raids. Thousands participated. The flower wars became a system, a human harvest that kept the altars fed year-round. And the captives knew their fate. Many walked to Tenochtitlan in silence, resigned. Others fought until the obsidian cut too deep, until their bodies gave out from exhaustion. Either way, the pyramid waited. For the Aztecs, this was sustainable warfare. Empires rose and fell over territory. But the Aztecs built theirs on a foundation of coordinated sacrifice, turning conflict itself into a religious industry. The climb, 114 steps to the gods. Picture yourself as a captive. You've been held for weeks, sometimes months, in a wooden cage. You've been fed well, fattened like livestock. Your captors aren't cruel, they're reverent. You're not a prisoner, you're sacred. The day arrives. Priests paint your body with blue stripes if you're meant for Tlaloc, the rain god. Red and white if you're for Huitzilopochtli, god of war and sun. Your hair is adorned with feathers. Jewelry circles your neck. You look like royalty, and in a way, you are. You're about to become divine. The drums begin, deep and relentless. Tens of thousands gather in the plaza below, not to mourn you, but to celebrate. You start climbing. Each step is steep, narrow, designed to exhaust. By the time you reach the top, your legs shake. Your breath comes in gasps. That's intentional. Resistance is harder when you can barely stand. At the summit, two temples face each other. One for Tlaloc, one for Huitzilopochtli. The priest-executioners wait. 4 of them grab your limbs, bending you backward over a stone curved like a crescent. Your chest arches upward, ribs stretched taut. The high priest raises a blade, black glass glinting in the sun. One cut, fast and deep. The obsidian is sharper than any steel the Spanish carried. It parts flesh like water. The priest reaches inside, fingers closing around your heart while it still beats. He pulls. There's a wet, tearing sound, and then he lifts it toward the sky. Your heart, still pulsing, is placed in a bowl called a quauxicali. Your body is rolled down the steps, tumbling over stone until it crashes into the plaza below. Sometimes your limbs are taken for ritual meals. Sometimes your skull is added to the tzompantli, a rack holding thousands of others. Either way, you're part of something now. You fed the sun. You kept the world turning. The Spaniards would later count the steps of the great temple, attempting to calculate how many died there. Conservative estimates suggest 20,000 people per year across the Aztec Empire. During the dedication of the Great Temple in 1487, chroniclers claimed between 4,000 and 80,000 victims over 4 days. Even if exaggerated, the scale was beyond European comprehension. Children for the rain, Tlaloc's tears. Not everyone climbed the pyramid. Some victims, especially children, were reserved for Tlaloc. The rain god demanded tears, so the Aztecs gave him children who would cry. During the dry season, priests selected young boys and girls, often purchased from poor families or taken as tribute. These children were dressed in blue and green, adorned with paper decorations shaped like mountains. They were paraded through the city as living prayers. Then they were taken to caves, mountaintops, or the center of lakes. Some were sealed in underwater chambers. Others were left in mountain shrines to die slowly from exposure. The longer they cried before death, the better. Tears were seen as rain made manifest. A child's suffering became a sympathetic magic, convincing Tlaloc to weep his own tears across the land. Archaeological finds at the Templo Mayor excavation in Mexico City unearthed the remains of over 40 children, some as young as 2, buried with offerings to Tlaloc. Their small bones showed signs of malnutrition, deliberately weakened to ensure they'd cry more. Not all Aztecs accepted this easily. Some mothers wailed as their children were taken, but refusal wasn't an option. The priests framed it as honor. Your child will save us all. Your child will bring rain. And when the rains came, as they eventually did each year, it validated the horror. See? The gods listened. Gladiators of the gods, the sacrifice of warriors. Some sacrifices were tests of courage. During the festival of Tlacaxipehualistli, captured warriors were given a chance to fight for their lives, or rather, to die with honor. The victim, usually a renowned enemy warrior, was tied to a large circular stone called a temalacatl. He was given weapons, a club embedded with feathers instead of obsidian, useless for real combat. 4 Aztec jaguar and eagle warriors, armed with real weapons, surrounded him. This wasn't a fair fight. It was theater, a ritualized combat where the outcome was never in doubt. But how the captive fought mattered. If he showed bravery, the crowd roared approval. If he fell quickly, he was mocked. The best deaths earned respect. Some warriors reportedly smiled as they bled out, proud to die as fighters rather than helpless victims. After death, the body was flayed. Priests wore the skin for 20 days during the festival, the rotting flesh symbolizing the renewal of spring, the shedding of old life for new growth. Spectators could even request to wear pieces of the skin, believing it brought fertility and strength. The Spaniards found this practice particularly revolting. But for the Aztecs, it was transformation. Death feeding life. Skin becoming sacred garment. Sacrifice turning into rebirth. Paud, the new fire ceremony, when the world almost ended. Every 52 years, the Aztec calendar completed a full cycle, and the Aztecs believed the world might end. The new fire ceremony was their desperate attempt to prevent it. On the final night of the cycle, all fires across the empire were extinguished. Pregnant women were locked in granaries, terrified they might transform into beasts. Children were kept awake, pinched to prevent sleep, for fear they'd turn into mice if the sun failed to rise. At midnight, priests and the emperor climbed the Hill of the Star near Tenochtitlan. They watched the Pleiades constellation. If it continued moving, the world would survive. A captive warrior was stretched across a stone, and as the stars confirmed the cycle's renewal, the high priest cut open the victim's chest and ignited a fire in the cavity where his heart had been. Runners carried torches lit from this sacred flame to every temple, every household in the empire. New fires blazed everywhere. The world was reborn, and it cost one man's life to guarantee it. This wasn't just superstition. It was existential terror managed through ritual. The entire empire held its breath, and when the sun rose again, the relief was genuine. They had survived. The gods were satisfied. For now. The Spaniards arrive. Horror meets horror. When Hernán Cortés and his men entered Tenochtitlan in 1519, they were awestruck by the city's grandeur. Causeways over shimmering lakes, markets bursting with goods, architecture rivaling anything in Europe. And then they climbed the temples. Bernal Diaz del Castillo described walls so clotted with blood that the floor was inches deep in it. The smell, he wrote, was worse than any slaughterhouse in Castile. Skulls lined racks in orderly rows, thousands upon thousands, each one a life offered to keep the cosmos in balance. The Spanish were disgusted, but their own hands were far from clean. They had brought the Inquisition, burning heretics alive. They enslaved indigenous populations by the millions. They waged wars of conquest, drenched in blood. The difference was framing. The Spanish killed for God and gold. The Aztecs killed for the sun and rain. When the Spanish conquered Tenochtitlan in 1521, they dismantled the temples stone by stone. They burned the codices that explained the rituals. They baptized the survivors and taught them that human sacrifice was evil, even as they worked those same people to death in silver mines. The Aztec worldview didn't survive the conquest, but its echoes remain. In the ruins of the Templo Mayor, in the Tzompantli, uncovered beneath Mexico City's streets. In the questions we still ask, how does a civilization convince itself that horror is holy? The echoes, what the stones remember. Today, the Templo Mayor sits partially excavated in the heart of Mexico City, surrounded by modern streets and coffee shops. Tourists walk past the stones where priests once stood, holding hearts toward the sun. The smell of blood is gone, but the questions remain. How many died on those steps? Tens of thousands? Hundreds of thousands? We'll never know for certain. What we do know is that the Aztecs believed, truly believed, they had no choice. The universe demanded payment. To refuse was to condemn everyone. Some scholars see the Aztec sacrifices as a form of state control, using religion to justify expansion and intimidate enemies. Others see genuine faith, a people doing what they thought was necessary to survive. Both can be true. Belief and power often wear the same face. The Aztec Empire lasted less than 200 years, but in that time it built one of the most sophisticated cities in the world, developed advanced astronomy and agriculture, and created art of stunning beauty. It also turned human sacrifice into an industry, a system so embedded in daily life that stopping would have felt like letting the world end. Walk through the ruins today, and you'll see beauty and terror layered together. Intricate carvings of gods. Channels carved to let blood flow. Altars where children's bones were found. The stones don't judge. They just remember. The Aztecs aren't here to defend themselves. Their books were burned. Their temples toppled. Their voices filtered through Spanish chroniclers who had every reason to exaggerate. But the evidence remains. The bones, the blades, the pyramids built on suffering, reaching toward a sun that demanded everything. So tell us, was this faith or madness? Devotion or control? Could any belief system justify what happened on those steps? Drop your thoughts below. And if this journey into the Aztec Empire's darkest rituals gripped you, hit subscribe so you don't miss our next dive into history's shadows. Until then, remember, the stones are quiet now, but the echoes of what they witnessed still pulse beneath Mexico City's streets.